Today, I want to talk to you about anxiety, having soul trouble, and stress. Anybody ever had those feelings before? This last year of my life, I would say I've kind of been more anxious. I've had more anxious feelings than I typically remember. And the other night, I had one of those nights where I woke up and I was just troubled about a lot of things in life. And so I woke up and I did what I know I'm supposed to do. I prayed and I said, Lord, I give this to you, and I give this situation to you, and I give my aging parents to you, and these decisions that my boys have to make. I was giving to the Lord, but I was very frustrated because I feel like I would give these things to God, but I still was troubled in my spirit about it. And I wanted to be free of trouble and anxiety, and I wanted to not have that feeling anymore. So then I kind of felt like a little less than Christian, like, Melissa, you're not really believing God. Your faith is a little weak. And so that frustrated me. Well, then, like God does, my next week of Bible study was all about the peace of God and what is peace. And I was led to this verse in my Bible study, John chapter 14. Here's what Jesus says: Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled. There's what I don't want, trouble. Neither let them be afraid. And I was like, okay, yeah, I agree with that. Peace, Lord, I want your peace. I don't want my heart to be troubled. I don't want to be afraid, but I'm still troubled and I still have a little bit of anxiety over stuff in my mind. Well, I kept studying, and here's what I found that really kind of helped me. 3 chapters before this, chapter 11, 12, and 13, we see instances in Scripture where Jesus was troubled. In John chapter 11, he's coming to Bethany to raise Lazarus from the dead after Lazarus died, and he sees the grief of Mary and Martha and the villagers, and Scripture says he was deeply moved and troubled. And then in chapter 12, he is predicting his death, talking about his death, and it says that now my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, take this cup from me. He's praying and he's saying, my heart is troubled. I know what's coming. This suffering that's coming, I'm worried about it. It's going to be hard. Maybe a little anxiety there. And then in John chapter 13, he's talking about the future betrayal of Judas. And he says, after saying these things, Jesus was troubled in his spirits and testified, truly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. So we have 3 things here that I think most Americans would say cause them anxiety, worry, and trouble. Seeing the suffering and grief of our loved ones, the suffering and grief of the suffering and pain that we experience ourselves, and then the suffering that comes from broken relationships. Jesus said all those things, and each time it says he was troubled. So maybe my definition of peace is not what the Bible defines as peace. You know, if you Google peace, the definition that comes up is freedom from disturbance, tranquility. And I think that's how I would agree with that definition. I would define it that way. In my mind, peace is the absence of trouble, the absence of stress, the absence of worry. If those things are gone, I'm at peace. But Jesus says in John 14, the peace I give to you is not as the world gives us. That's how the world would define peace. But in John chapter 16, 2 chapters later, this is what Jesus says. In this world, you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. So maybe this definition of peace that I've had, the absence of trouble, isn't the way Jesus defines peace. I think scriptural peace is not absence of trouble, but walking with God in the midst of trouble and giving your troubles over to God, much like Jesus had to when he was praying and walking on the earth. So my friends, if you've had stress and anxiety and worry, we can't live there. We have to give our anxiety and our stress and our trouble to the Lord, but just know you're not alone. Jesus himself experienced trouble. And you know what Jesus did? He turned to the Father. He leaned into the Father. And if Jesus can do that and have his troubles taken away, so can we. So go in peace, my friends, not with the absence of trouble, but with Jesus by your side in the midst of trouble.